Since its inception in 1997, Sydney Open has invited audiences on a journey of architectural wanderlust, allowing them to unlock the doors of the city's most historically and culturally significant places. This year we continue to deliver on this tradition of cultural immersion through a reimagined program of unique outdoor moments and rich online experiences, including today's live sustainability panel. My name is Rebecca Bushby, Director of Audience and Creative Production at Sydney Living Museums, and I'm excited you've joined us today for Sydney Open 2021. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are presenting from today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands on which you are all watching and listening from. At Sydney Living Museums, we bring together exhibitions, programs and collections to tell the rich and evolving stories of Sydney's cultural heritage. Throughout these diverse projects, we seek to reduce the organisation's carbon footprint. One recent enhancement we've made is the integration of solar panels at our Western Sydney Record Centre at Kingswood. These manage to power the facility during peak winter days without drawing from the grid. In our upcoming discussion, we will hear from industry leaders who are innovating with sustainable practices. I'm delighted to introduce today's moderator, Dr. Danielle Hromek, proud Budawang woman of the Yuin Nation, spatial designer, cultural advisor and researcher. Enjoy the program.
Morami, Midigagaram Barak, Tiati Mara, Daragapemo. Hello everyone, I'm Danielle Hromek and welcome to Sydney Open. Our session is called Regenerate, Creating a Greener Sydney. It's always a real honour to remember country and to think through which country you're on, and I really encourage you all at this moment to take a moment to think through whose footsteps we're all standing in and walking through every moment of the day. Think through who's been here forever, as far as our stories say, and honour them in your movements throughout the day. We're coming to you live from the Gold Melting Room at the Mint on Macquarie Street. Don't forget to ask your questions in the comments. We'll have 15 minutes for questions at the end, and we'll be sure to fit in as many questions as we can. You can follow up Sydney Living Museums online and comment with hashtag Sydney is open. Sydney is open, isn't that wonderful? And at Sydney is open. And this is on Twitter and Instagram. I'm going to ask my co-conspirators here to introduce themselves. First, I'm going to throw to Sam. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Samantha Rich. I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman. I've been working in the architecture field for about 6 years, in both kind of across different disciplines, but particularly at the moment in health, and been working with Jinjama doing cultural design and research.
Thanks, Sam. And William?
Hi, I'm William Smart. I have a company called Smart Design Studio. In this panel today, I'm less of an expert on sustainability compared to other people, but it's at the forefront of my mind when I do work. So I'll talk a lot about our studio and how we made a new studio that didn't have air conditioning in the space and made that comfortable and made it naturally ventilated, and some of the challenges we faced along the way, and then how we try to integrate that into the landscape and think holistically about that as a pilot project, and then how that impacts on the building industry. I'd also like to talk a bit about my observations of the building industry, what I see in going to construction sites, in working with development, working with individual clients, and how that is changing at the moment and the potential for change there as well.
Thank you. And we've got Caroline joining us from Glasgow. So Caroline, we're looking forward to hearing what you've been up to over there, but would you introduce yourself first, please?
Hi, look, it's Caroline Peacock. I've got my name on my thing is wrong because I'm not, and I can't change it, but here I am in Glasgow at COP26. I'm normally at Miller's Point at Kuja, which is on the lands of the Gadigal people. I'm an architect who in the beginning of 2018 changed my practice so I could be more nimble and be able to focus my attention and focus onto more strategic ways of accelerating advice into sustainability, because I realised that this is serious, Mum. You know, like it's really serious shit. And I think that anyway, I could get really depressed about that. But here I am I'm actually here in Glasgow at the COP26 convention. It took a while. I found out about 10 days ago that I could come, and it took me a week to decide whether I would. Because I think that, you know, how is the carbon footprint of flying over here? But I felt that it was really important for more voices, Australian voices that are different to our government, and say that there are Australians thinking differently to our government, to be here on the ground and reinforcing that to everyone we talk to. So back to me. I'm chair of 1 Million Women, which is a group sort of empowering women to act on climate change. I'm also a spokesperson for Australian Architects Declare, and a member of the Australian Institute of Architects Climate Action and Sustainability Task Force, and I'm still doing a few other projects with my company, Peacock.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I'm actually going to start our questions with Caroline. And I think this is the question that's on a lot of people's lips. Are we doing enough right now in order to stop would be nice, rising global temperatures?
You know, it is really interesting being here. This is the first COP I've ever been to. So I'm so far from actually understanding the whole place, and it's a lot. I think there's about 25,000 people here. There's normally about 40,000 people at a COP. So it's a lot of people coming together and having a lot of meetings, and it's chaos, and it's really hard to kind of get your hand around where you should be and what you should be doing. But the sense that I'm getting is that, and in talking to people who've been to previous COPs and who know a lot more about this than me, is that there is a real understanding that this is urgent. Right now, it is really urgent, and it is really important for all countries to be doing everything they can, and Australia is failing. Sort of, that is not Australians, but our federal government, Australia, and they're sitting here taking credit for photovoltaics that individuals have put on their roof. They're taking credit for the work that the state governments have been doing, and they're not actually, and they're not acknowledging the damage that they are doing by still promoting coal and gas when the rest of the world is saying it has to stop right now. And, you know, and you sort of go, oh, well, what about the jobs? Well, what about the world? What about the place that we're living in? And the real job of a government is to say this has to happen, and how do we transition our society into a different place? And I think Australia is uniquely placed to be a superpower in a different place. And the first part of that is that we have, Danielle, the oldest continuing culture in the world, who actually understands the importance and the way that we can connect to country and how that can influence everything we do in a really positive and beautiful way. And how we take that into the 21st century is something that we should be really exploring. And how do we live more closely and cleverly with nature? How do we understand the temporal and the seasonal patterns of time? How do we be in a loving and caring relationship with place? The second thing is that we have more powerful renewable energies in solar and wind than anywhere in the world virtually. And we can be a superpower if we work out how to harness that. And the third thing is that we are a really creative group of people in Australia. And I just think that we need to apply that creativity to not working out how to jam the life we've been living into a different future, but how do we create a totally different future that is more connected to country, more sort of caring, much better, but less and not damaging. And I just think that, and particularly as architects, I think we have a superpower in being able to offer that. So back to COP, I don't know. I think that we've been wandering around the Australian Pavilion, and whilst we are producing, a lot of people are coming there because they brought in 2 baristas from Melbourne, and we have the best coffee in Glasgow happening there. But everyone is pretty, all the people I've been talking to are, and the Australians I've been talking to are embarrassed about the Australian Pavilion, talking about the Australian, positive energy, the Australian way, which when it first put up was talking about fracking gas and carbon capture, which is totally not proven and super expensive, and with an advertisement from Santos and other things. So it's complex, but there's a lot of pressure, and some people are saying, I was speaking to someone today from the Australia Institute, and they were saying they were positive because there's a lot of agreements happening that will be binding all countries in the world to doing better, and that's not to be underestimated, and particularly so early in the COP because it doesn't end till the end of next week. So I think that there's some positivity there. It's a complex place to understand. I don't profess to do that, but that's my report back to you.
Wow, thank you, Caroline. I love this this conversation that you've already started about having a superpower, and we in our work talk about dreaming up a new way, and I think that is the opportunity that we have in this group, in this country, in this multitude of countries that, as we understand them in Indigenous ways, to dream up a new way. And I guess I wanted to throw to both of you who are in the room what your thoughts are about what Caroline's been talking about, and about, this potential for us to change, but we're not. We're clearly doing enough.
It's such a big question, but I guess, speaking from kind of the work that we're doing, I think it's really nice to kind of see that our voices are starting to be heard and kind of valued as understanding kind of how we start to reshape how we think about the future, and because everything is connected, and understanding that everything that we do is connected to somebody else and to something else, every living thing. And I think kind of understanding that connectivity means that we can't be in this silo anymore where we're just putting something on a site. It's greater than that. It's kind of this evolution and this connectivity of, life. If I'm taking something from here, I'm taking so much from here. It's not just, I'm cutting down this tree because it's, in the way of my building, but you're taking out food and habitat and shade and water retention. And, I think that we really need to kind of start thinking in a way that, is putting, individuals or people kind of in the background, and thinking more, about country and how we're impacting country, because then our solutions for things will just be a lot more kind of inventive and sustainable, I guess.
I also have that feeling at COP when I've been watching our government go to that I feel entirely embarrassed of that presentation of just what seems like pushing out those changes that are inevitable as far as possible. And I do always think of that image of sustainability for me is like a V8 car driving towards a cliff, and we just know we have to put the brakes on at some point, but everyone's saying, can we delay that a little longer and push it out as far as we can, and then we'll do something a little bit later, because it feels so good right now, the revving of the car, the noise, the feeling, the luxury, all that kind of stuff. The kind of hope that I have for the future is exactly what Carolyn has articulated, which is about integrating energy production in new buildings, integrating landscape into buildings, and also I think this kind of idea of reducing carbon is critical, but it's only one aspect in that sustainability question, isn't it? There are so many other parts of it that need to be infused into that complex matrix of how to make something truly sustainable. And I feel like less is a good concept to be working on, and reducing impact in multiple ways is a great concept, and then integrating health for the soil, the trees, the air, ourselves, the fauna around us is also needs to seep into that conversation. And COP seems to, from what I hear on the news, seems to be focused on carbon at the moment, which I know that's so important because it's urgent now.
You've drifted into some things that we were going to talk about, but I might just bring it a bit forward. And what are the small things that we can be doing in built environment professions in our practices? And you've started to both speak about it. Is there anything else you wanted to add in about what are those small things we can do to make differences immediately?
I'm happy to start. Yeah. So we recently had a company certified as being carbon neutral, and that was off the back of building a new office where we make 3 times the energy that we consume, and we hooked it up with our neighbours, and we export directly to our neighbours and have some batteries and use that to bolster the off-peak periods or going into the evenings. So kind of some of that footprint is quite important, and how you can do that. That was actually a very simple process for us, and not a hugely expensive process, and we reap the benefits every month. And I think, 5-6 years from now, that will have entirely paid for itself. So I see that as a great investment with multiple benefits. And then, just holistically, as a company, we say, how can we reduce waste, for example? And in the design of our office, there are no waste bins on the floor. You can recycle paper and you can recycle other facilities, but there are only 2 landfill bins in the office. And for an office of 45 people, and our residents as well includes in this, we're able to get our waste down to half a silo bin a week. It just is that simple, but it does also require an email once a week saying, make sure you don't put your coffee cup in the wrong bin and those kinds of things. And those things can have a filter-on effect, and that's been quite exciting. Also, just when we built the building, we planted 18 new trees in the streets and around our area, and put in about 2,000 drought-tolerant plants. I planted them with my mum and my sister, and in that process, we uncovered 1 worm in Alexandria, which was an indication that the soil health is very poor. And then the trees look a little bit sick. And now, a couple of years in, you start to look at the trees, they're starting to look healthier. When it rains, you'll see worms crawl out onto the footpath. And you kind of realise that that's a small change. But I think there's years to go before the roots start to regain their health and the trees start to live and flourish and kind of merge into each other and regrow. So there's so many other ways as well that you can integrate.
Absolutely.
They're small things, actually.
They're small things, yeah.
Yeah.
But
get rid of the lawn out the front and change to drought-tolerant plants.
Wouldn't it be great if we could eat wherever we go? But that's another agenda that I have. Caroline, I wondered if you had any thoughts about the small things that we can do in the built environment professions.
Look, it was really interesting when on the second day, I think on Tuesday when we got here, or Wednesday when we got here, Natalie was part of a fantastic conference, a discussion called Money Matters. And there was this discussion about, and there's this amazing film called The Planet Earth, It's Too Big to Fail, or something like that, which is coming out soon. Amazing film, you must watch it. But a number of the people were saying that where you put your money, so in Australia, that's particularly relevant because we've all got superannuation and we've got bank accounts, and you might not think that's much, but they are important. And if you take them from banks or superannuation funds that are investing in fossil fuel or timber deforestation or negative things, and put them into funds that are supporting the future we need, like renewable energy, like reforestation, all sorts of positive things, firstly, you'll probably get more money because those businesses are doing much better. But that move alone has apparently, and I'm not sure whether this is a European number or anyway, we're talking numbers, so 21 times the impact of stopping flying, stopping driving, stopping flying changing your energy to renewables, and not eating meat combined. So you kind of go, there's a huge impact on money, so maybe you don't do these other things. And Natalie spoke to the truth that doing small little things, lots of things, is absolutely critical to building your muscles, to sort of empowering you to say, I can do things. And that is what 1 Million Women is all about, is about sort of saying every single choice you make every single day has an impact. And if you can make better choices and do better things, it's not only better for the environment, it's better for you. And you feel like, wow, hey, that was easy. I can do something more and I can do something better. And so I think and the times are really desperate, and we need a complete and both approach at the moment. But I think that there's so many small things you can do. And I think, the idea of planting trees and understanding the ecology of the soil and all of that, is getting dirt in your hands, is really important, because I think we all need to deeply reconnect to nature and actually understand how much we are part of it and how much we need. Not only we need to care for it, but how much we get out of caring for it. And, there's just such a two-way flow. And I just think all of that is really important.
Great. I was trying to think how many years ago it was that I contacted my bank and super and said, what are you doing? And when they didn't have the answers for me, I moved. And I feel much better for myself for doing that, but I am actually doing better in my super, and I won't lie about that. It's actually been a better outcome for me as well. So I can't, as that's just a small advertisement for what you've just said, but I agree with you. Sam, did you want to talk about small things?
I guess, I really love the idea of kind of planting a tree, but I think that it's also just about, because of the volume of materials that we're using or we're creating when we're architects is quite substantial, and a simple choice away from using one material over another, I guess it's not a small change, but it can have a big impact. And I think that, we really need to kind of drive the choices that we're presenting to our clients and be a lot more mindful about, what we're choosing to present, and like simple choices between, even I guess having, I have gas in my apartment and I don't own it, so I don't have the choice to change that. But, if every single multi-residential, building that's being built doesn't have gas anymore, then for me personally, I would love to live in that apartment, because it means that I have a choice, because I don't have, the ability to, make those choices myself as, a renter or an individual. And so I think that things like that are really easy for us to kind of start doing. I think that's probably the smallest I can think of.
There's a diversity of answers there, which I'm really enjoying. And I guess that's why we have a lovely panel. But I want to throw back to you, Caroline, about biophilia. What is it? Why is it important? And how can we improve biophilia in our cities?
Well, biophilia is bio, which is life, and philia, which is love of it. So it's a love of life. And I think it was a term devised by E.O. Wilson in the 50s last century, and it was about the innate connection that people have to nature and how you feel much better when you are connected with it. And I mean, I think that some of the most seminal experiences we have, if you think about, if you go to the surf and you sit there and you watch this, and it touches all your senses. You can smell it, you can hear it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can see it. And it's like this thing that enlivens all of those senses. And the same when you walk in a forest and you're just, totally with it, and it calms you, and it's just this, I don't know, somehow through the, I suppose when we became very mechanical, we got disconnected from nature, and I don't think it's been good for us. And I think it certainly has not enabled us to understand the care we should take, not only that we should take for nature, but that it takes for us. I just think that reconnection is just so important. And, you know, I don't need to tell you this, Danielle, because it's just like, you know, all of the lessons, all of the deep lessons that we had before we got mechanized and that we were more Indigenous, we were more of our place, we're kind of bred out of us. And some people are really scared of nature, and it's actually a place to go and to be restored and to fall in love with again. And I think when we fall in love with the earth and take care of her, she will take care of us again. And it's kind of critical. And I think this idea of separating nature from the cities or separating nature from our buildings is wrong. You know, we should be kind of there should be a much more seamless connection between them and a really strong interrelationship between them.
And look, you're speaking to my heart there, Caroline. I've been writing chapters and essays and speaking on falling in love with country for a while, and trying to work out how do you do that and what's the answer, because, you know, clearly we have had that disconnection, and how do you reclaim it and regain that? And it's such an important conversation for us. I think in all of the things that we talk about, in all of the conversations that we have, and I will come back in a minute, William, to biophilia, but I want to talk a little bit about country-centred design as part of this conversation, because for us that's what we use, and it does have a strong relationship to biophilia, but it is a bit different. And I wondered if, Sam, you wanted to talk about country-centred design and how you use it.
So I guess it's just about, you know, it's biophilia, but with, you know, a deeper kind of meaning and story. And I don't know, it's hard to kind of explain sometimes, because it's just, you know, it's within your soul. It's just like this fire that, you know, you have connected to that place, and, you know, the songs of that place that kind of tell you how to be there and how to look after it. And I think, you know, it's so, like, all of the things you were saying, it's just, you know, it's things that we have a conversation about all the time. You know, you go out on to a place and people are like, oh, country is not here, country is out in the bush. And I think that is so sad, because it means that we don't understand that, you know, even just that material that's been processed and manufactured is a part of country. It has come from country somewhere else. And then country is still below that. And, you know, part of what we're doing is trying to bring that back out, so people aren't thinking of country only in these small spaces that we provide in our cities, but, you know, that it's everywhere. And, you know, I think it's about sharing that with, you know, non-Indigenous people, so that they can kind of, you know, have that love of country like we have that love of country. I don't know if I've, you know, said it.
Beautiful, Sam. And I had a stroke of luck in my PhD that elders were happy to talk to me about country. I don't know, they were very generous with me, because I went around asking some, you know, questions that you know probably they don't get asked. And one of them was, you know, do we have country in the city? And they almost bit my head off. I'm glad that they did. Because it really forced me to think about how that is. How do we have country in the city, and how is that relationship? And they said, Barb, everywhere you walk, your ancestors have been there before, and they're still there, and they're waiting for you to call out to them and to hear back from them, and to hear everything that they know about this place. It might have been changed in material, but the immaterial and the intangible is still there, and it's still waiting for you to tap into. And so that's the gift, I think, that we bring as Aboriginal designers into built environment professions, that we've got that. We're not as far away as non-Indigenous people from that disconnection. We're still connected, and even right here in the middle of this place that was the first point of contact, you know, right next to the Parliament here, we're still connected here, and we still know the country's here. Yeah. I'll finish my little rant and pass to you, William, about your experiences or thoughts about biophilia.
Yeah, actually, could I ask just a question back to you about country? So I'm working on a new building in the city, and I'm reading about country, and I've been watching YouTube videos released about how it works. But how would I, in that building, how would I embed country in the design of a new building right in the city?
Yeah.
So it's surrounded by streets on every side. The street trees are there. It's a historic part of town. How do I embed it?
Do that? We do that every day, so that's a great question back to us.
Yeah.
For us, country isn't just what you see, it's what you can't see as well. It's all of the knowledge that's embedded into the landscape. Country is the air, the sky, it's the greenery and the flora and the fauna. It's all of us.
Yeah.
It's the materials that you use. It's water. And so country-centred design for me is responding to all of those and the stories that combine them and bring them together. And the songs that still exist even if we don't hear them anymore. They're still there. And so you do probably need a little bit of guidance by somebody like Samurai into that. But it's such a beautiful journey when you start it, and you start to see magic everywhere, even here in the middle of the city. And you start to see opportunities for giving back to other non-humans, like, how are we going to feed the lorikeets here? Where are the baby lorikeets going to give birth? And you start to think in a different way because, and we've got a thing for lorikeets, Sam and I, so sorry, it's just going to come up. But, when you start to think like that, you start to make different decisions. And that's actually the point of country-centred design, is getting everyone to start to make different decisions and starting from a different starting point, which is that we aren't the centre of everything.
And thinking outside of these boundaries that we have created in, this colonial kind of grid, a boundary is not really there that we've created. A boundary is potentially, a river or a harbour, and thinking in terms of that. So, you might think, oh, we don't have any specific history or story that's in this very point, and you would be wrong, because it's like, this is just kind of, this is a whole part. It's like, all of these different parts together, and you just need to kind of start listening and thinking and seeing all of these connections that are here.
It's such a gift that we get to work in this now, because I don't know, we were shouting in the wind for a while. So thank you for inviting us back into the story.
In our industry now, it's a really big topic. Like, it's a lot of people are talking about it. People are wanting to learn more. I think, generally speaking, the architecture community is really open ears towards understanding this and wanting to do a better, build in a better way, I feel.
We want to work with you.
Yeah. Great.
I
might call you.
Anytime. Which is actually sort of the next question that's coming around, which is what fundamentally needs to change. We sort of started to talk about that, but I wondered, Caroline, if I could throw to you about what fundamental changes we need to be making in the way that we work.
Look, I think architects are creative storytellers, ultimately, storytellers and story makers. And I think that we can be really channeling our creative energies collaboratively with all of our, in an integrated design. I think we need to work with other engineers and landscape people and everyone else earlier. And I think we need to be engaging our clients in creating those stories, the different stories that need to be told and need to be created. Because it's not about, it's not about a future of less. It's actually about a richer future, but it's not richer in money. It's richer in experience. It's richer in sort of enjoyment of different things. And we need to be thinking creatively about how to get there and entice people there, create the future people want to go to, not say, how do we do less? Like, in actual fact, I do think less is more, but it's not about concentrating on that. It's about concentrating on what is more. More is, that connection to nature, that sort of rich experience of being with other people, of connecting with people, of connecting with with the environment that we're in, of the joy of listening to the dawn chorus, of the joy of sort of dancing in the rain, of all these things that there's a different way of being in the world that we need to engage our clients in discussing, so that we can then create places where those experiences, those rich experiences, can be enjoyed, and that the production of those spaces are not hurting the world as we do it. And I, one of those things is I just think we need to, and William, you'll probably kill me for saying this, I don't know that we need to build any more new buildings. I think we need to renovate, really creatively renovate existing ones. There's a huge amount of embodied energy there. And we've got this immediate triage we need to exercise on reducing carbon. And I just think that every bit counts, every tonne counts. I'm working with a group of people to say we should actually be having the building code that is being changed and agreed, and the Building Codes Board will be deciding on that in the very near future. We should be doing net zero buildings, and now, because we can. It's easy. It's not easy, but it's doable, and that's only in operation. And when we start talking about embodied energy, that's another story. But I just think that we actually have a fundamental paradigm change of how we live and operate in the world. And I just think that we need creative storytellers and story makers to lead that. And that's who we are. And I just think that that's an enormous opportunity.
It's such an opportunity for all of us in the room, and you not in the room, but with us in spirit in the room. And you have kind of led on to the next question that I wanted to talk about, which is, how can economic growth become synonymous with ecological and social sustainability? And I just want to say I actually personally have a real issue with the idea of growth. To me, growth that's just left to go forever is cancer, and we can't just continually just grow. So what does it look like as an alternative? And I might chuck to one of you here first. William.
Well, there's something that Caroline touched on before, was reuse. I think that's probably, kind of critical as well. So I think a first move in sustainability is to say, what is it that can be reused out of this? And for example, in our office, 80% of the existing footprint was perfectly fine. So we retained 80% of it. That's kind of a good way of cutting that back. The question again was just about growth, isn't it?
Yeah. How do we do economic growth with ecological growth and social sustainability? What about economic sustainability? What's a different model? How do we do all of those things and still have this fulfillment of life? That's not. It's based on a different starting point, I think, but.
I could probably speak just on what I think I have to do, rather than what does the world have to do, because it's such a big question for me anyway that I get kind of lost in it. But I feel like our company must be carbon neutral. All the projects we do, we have to work with our clients to make them as sustainable as possible. So big questions about, can you generate energy in this project? Can we embed that? Can we integrate green within the project? Can we reduce the size of the footprint? A great example of that is I have one project that we're able to reduce the footprint of by half by saying you don't need all these rooms if you introduced a timetable that would say the room that's used for this function in the morning becomes this function in the afternoon. So some of that, clever thinking can actually make a more energetic building, because it's more multi-purpose in the way it works, but also reduce its footprint in many different ways. I kind of rode my bike here. I love riding my bike around the city. That's just such a no-brainer for me, because it's such a great feeling. I feel a bit healthy. It's faster than driving. There's no hassle of parking. It's just so many ticks in those regards. But I feel like what we have to do as a company is just keep on saying, and we have a sustainability team in our office, and they keep reminding us that what can we do that's better. And we are starting now to look at built projects and think, this is what it's about. How much carbon per square metre are we generating with this construction system? And we have a table that says if we were making it out of timber, it would be this amount per square metre, and if it was out of concrete and steel, it would be this much. And and then these are the consequences of that spatially. And we have these little understandings now, and we're trying to move and integrate it into construction. One of my big bugbears is waste in construction as well. It's kind of it is. For us, it's been almost impossible to police a construction site to move, and not even half would go into, kind of being recycled. It's really hard to police. It drives me nuts, and that's probably a big focus of mine for next year, seeing if we can get on top of that. You might have some tips about that, Caroline. It drives me crazy.
Well, I actually think the word
go ahead,
waste
Caroline. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think the word waste has to be removed from our dictionary because, what is waste? It's actually a resource that hasn't found its home, and I think that we just need to rethink all of our systems so that we don't do that. And similarly, the idea of continuous growth it's a rubbish idea. It doesn't work in a limited system. So there cannot be continuous growth because we are a limited system where there is not continuous growth. So that's just, and I think Kate Rayworth, who's written Donut Economics, has gone a long way in exploring some really interesting ideas about how to do that because, economics was originally, we've become a slave to economics, whereas economics was meant to serve us. And I just think that, this is part of the whole reimagining of what we need to be in the future is, yes, we all need to eat. We all need to house ourselves. We all need to have, enough money to do things. But do we need outrageous and continuous growth? And I think there's a word here that comes to mind is sufficiency. What is sufficient as opposed to what is efficient, what is effective, I could go on, but I won't. I'll let someone else talk.
we do have ideas in Aboriginal culture about enoughness and about sharing, and I think that's a one that certainly I've been looking at. And I actually want to have a chat with Kate about turning her donut inside out, but that's another conversation and maybe another talk for another time.
The Maori in New Zealand did exactly that.
There you go. We've got a synchronicity probably in our minds. But there's one more question before we throw to the audience that I want us to think on. And so I guess anything else you want to say that I haven't been able to cover then please do chuck it into the answer. How can we plan for the future in the development of our cities and regional areas to cope with the effects of climate change? Is it already happening? Okay, Caroline, do you want to start?
Look, today I heard Al Gore gave his updated talk, and we are in serious problems. If we in Australia didn't get that message over the 1920 bushfire season, the rest of the world has been hammered by this in floods, in fires, in all sorts of things for the last however many years. And it's just everything we do has to be focused on reducing our impact. And if it's not enough anymore to say, I'll let someone else do that. We have to look at everything we're doing and going, how can I? And I think reducing impact is a really boring thing. And this is where regenerative design comes in. How can what I do improve and make better of the place we're in? Because we can do that, and that's our, that's something that we've just got to be doing is sort of, how do we in developing this site, this building, whatever, how does the place and the people and the systems become better, all of them together from that work? What do we need to change? How do we need to do that? And it's so urgent, because if we don't get it right now, like, we haven't got 10 years to work it out. We've all got to start now. But there is huge opportunity and excitement in doing that if you start thinking regeneratively, as opposed to thinking in a mean, I'm going to do less, I'm going to, in a reductionist way. It's a regenerative way that will take us into the future we need.
No, thank you. Sam?
I just think that we need to kind of up what we're preparing ourselves for, especially in a city kind of context. We design to, 1 in 100 floods, but in reality, should we be designing for 1 in 1,000 year floods, because that's more likely what's going to be happening, or are our buildings kind of designed so that if our climate shifts to be more like Byron Bay or Brisbane, will our future buildings be able to kind of sustain that, or be able to kind of support that type of kind of future, environment and climate. So I think that there needs to be kind of consideration about the places that we're building, and if they're appropriate for the lifespan that they're going to have. Like 40 years from now, what does that climate look like? Is that building still going to be there? Are we kind of going to have to, tag on more air conditioning to, half of our houses because we can't live in it in the way that it is? So I just think that we need to kind of be more future thinking, that's...
And that sort of touches to longevity as well. There's a kind of an idea in building that lots of things get... you only have to look at Sydney to realise that it's, in terms of its construction of buildings, they've been built, they've been knocked down, they've been rebuilt, they've been knocked down. And I don't know if we get any better. I look at some of the old photos of the city from years ago and think, those buildings were beautiful. Like, why did we tear them all down? I kind of feel like designing for longevity is something that I'm personally very focused on, and we often say, can we make this last for 100 years, all the materials in this building? And when we've done 2 projects where that's been the question, and we've tried to stick to that, it's sort of taken us back to fairly robust integral materials that don't rely on paint for corrosion protection, and things like brick we just know will last for a long period of time. The other part about sustainability that I have found in my dabblings with it is it's quite complex in a way. So, should we stop using this? Should we, refrain from using it? And often the answers are quite, complicated and perhaps confusing at times, because companies who are selling them will put a spin on it to say it's quite green when really it's not. I think what I've kind of decided to do with it is just make the best that I can on the information that I have, and probably start with that and learn and take it forward. So again, in our building, as a good example, we have all the windows open, and they open and close automatically. And in doing that, we've learnt that fresh air is beautiful, the natural light is beautiful. People walk into the space, they say, why is this so good in here? Why does it feel so good? And so half it's because the air's fresh and there's no lights on. Also, with that, you kind of learn a bit about, we have leaves coming into the office because the wind blows and it blows leaves and dust and insects and things. So that's the next part of the design for me, is how to make those, other parts work better, and to keep learning and keep growing. And I feel like if we do that as an industry and then bring our clients on the way and use these projects as demonstration, slowly the paradigm shifts. And I think everybody can be a part of that, and then cumulatively we make a significant change.
Yeah, agree. And that feeling of living inside out is, or with the outside in, is actually a magical one. I live on the 9th floor of a building on the top of a hill in Surrey Hills, and we live almost all year with our doors open, other than when it just gets really cold. And it's my way of connecting to country is seeing the changes in the sky every moment, and knowing that that's probably not changed forever, and feeling that every moment that's an important thing for me to feel connected in that way. But wouldn't it be nice if there were other ways that we were doing that better in our city spaces? There are some questions I'm going to throw to. Actually, I might start off answering the first one. Sorry, guys. Indigenous people were our first sustainable designers. This is from Tara. How might we learn from their practice? You have to ask us, of course. We haven't been asked very much. I'd imagine this is, I don't know, I spend a long time shouting in the wind for a while and not being heard. And now I'm asking back of clients, are you serious about this? Are you serious about what we've got to say about country-centred design, about designing with country? And I gauge how serious they are, and then I'll push our team as far as I can to really understand everything that I possibly can give to them and bring to that project about not just sustainability, because that's only one consideration, but all of the other things that we need to know about country for country to be healthy. And so I think there's a lot that we need to learn, but it's about understanding that we come from a holistic system and that we aren't the top of that pyramid like we think we are. And country will keep... there are laws here, and I talk about law with a capital L. There are laws here that we didn't make as humans, that came from the dreaming, that were here, and they're going to stay here whether we choose to ignore them or actually interact with them. And those laws, if we aren't behaving well, will actually impact us. And, we've seen that in Australia explicitly lately with fires and floods and possibly even pandemics, illness certainly. And how we start to respond to those, and not just start, but like galloping, we have to gallop towards responding, is such an important question. But we have to know that law. And most Australian people wouldn't even know that there is law. And so we have to start listening is the first thing, and listening's so huge. Sam, you want to...
Caroline kind of said it really well, or she started to kind of touch on it, is this idea of waste. And, we didn't really have waste because, and in ecological systems, you don't have waste because what is kind of potentially could be thought of as waste is food for something else, or becomes, nutrients for, trees or something like that. So I think it's about kind of, having that circular kind of idea of everything needs to kind of go back and give back to, whatever other living being that you're trying to do. And so I think that it's just, the idea of if you're, going to have a piece of meat or you go and catch a kangaroo or something, you use every single part of that animal so that there's nothing to waste. And, there were people, that's their totem, so they can't have that. And so, having that understanding that you can't have everything, and I think that is really difficult, in a consumer society, to start thinking that I can't have everything that I'm being told that I want to have. And, those are kind of the values of, my understanding is the values of Indigenous culture is having these thoughts and understanding that, by not having that is better for everything. And if we start to kind of think more like that, every single person, then I think that, we would be, in a better place.
Yeah, look, totems are the sort of explanation for our sustainable living, and that's another conversation, but that we could start there with that understanding of totemic living. We'll move on to another question from Sarah. Which country or countries are performing best in creating greener cities? Did you have any thoughts about that, Caroline?
Oh, look, I actually think that what's happening around the world is that it's not necessarily countries that are doing the inspiring things, it's local places. And I think that that's even happening in Australia. I think that here we've got some cities and council areas that are doing amazing things, and then we've got some state governments, like New South Wales state government's doing, Matt Keane's got some really ambitious targets in place for energy that's fantastic. I think that the future is going to be, and there's architects who are doing brilliant things, and developers and all sorts of teams who are doing some really good things. And I think what we've got to do is celebrate and promote and share the good and inspire each other, because I think that it's going to be a bottom up led recovery. I think that and we actually don't need to wait till the laws say you can do this. We can do it now. But I just think that we've all got to be sharing as much as we can, so that we can help each other go fast in this area, and share what doesn't work as well as what does work, because often in what doesn't work is where you learn your biggest, hardest lessons, and they're the ones you don't want others repeating. So I just think that you've got the usual acclaim of various Swedish and Norwegian nations doing well, but there's stories all over the place, and I think that is the richness of it, is that and from here in Australia there are some fantastic stories. So I don't think we need to be ashamed of our federal government. I think we need to be ashamed that we keep electing them back, and I think that the next election we actually need to get serious about putting in place people who are going to show leadership in climate change. And if we don't, we should be totally ashamed, because I think that is the key issue of the next election. Forget everything else. But really,
12 p.m.
I look at Australia and I sort of see Burwood Brickworks, the most sustainable shopping centre in the world. Hello, that's great. I see, a whole, I think Monash University, they've done an amazing building. There are stories all over of really great buildings, great teams, great things happening. So, but we've just got to really share and celebrate and help each other, because that's where we're going to succeed.
Thank you. There's a question here from Cam asking about career pathways. How might sustainable practices become standard rather than an elective in design education? Do you have any thoughts about that, William?
I think it does feel, I'm not sure about the education system, but it feels very embedded now in I did a little bit of teaching last year at UTS, and it was certainly embedded in the curriculum, what we were working on in the studio, and the conversation was alive for that, and how would that be integrated? And there's such broad considerations for that. There was something that came out of the last question I thought was interesting, is that I've been running my own practice for 23 years now, and I would say the last couple of years, I'd say so many more people are interested and committed to sustainability as a subject. And so we would have a conversation at the start, ask people, are there any key interests, any things they'd like their new home or their apartment or their office building to have, and they say, I'd like it to be as sustainable as possible. Yeah. Now, that conversation used to be, I'd like it to be sustainable so long as it doesn't cost too much. But it's not about that anymore. It's kind of as sustainable as possible, and so that's an opening for us to jump in there and leverage that. Also, just architecture as an education is incredibly diverse, and it allows for a huge number of specialists to move into so many different areas. And Carolyn's one of those, outstanding leaders in sustainability and architecture. So if you were interested in it, you could really focus a world around that, and there would be so many opportunities for you as employment opportunities after education.
Absolutely. There are some really great questions, and I have no idea how we're going to get through them all, but I'd love to address all of them. We've got time for one more. Oh God, which one do I choose? What's the most powerful role an architect can play in reducing environmental impact when designing? William, do you want to start off?
Look, I think it's such a tough question. I think one of the great things is just maximising the opportunity that's available, and I think the first step is always just what is the least amount of work that I can do here. So, you know, if the first question to us is what can we reuse out of this opportunity and can we compress? That's probably one of the very powerful steps that you can make. So reducing is reducing and maximising together as one.
Thank you. And Sam, any last words?
No, just designing of place. We've gone past international style, and I think that it's about kind of understanding, you know, the beautiful kind of context that we live in Sydney, and, you know, the environment and the landscape, and how to kind of use that as a starting point and an ending point in, you know, whatever we're bringing or we're adding to this city.
Lucky last, Caroline.
I just think that we need to help people find great joy from exactly what William and Sam were saying, from a sufficient use of less, very low, and really exploring the local place, but in a joyful way. And I just think that bringing our clients on that journey is the most important thing we can do.
Beautiful. Gave me tingles. That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much to you all, Caroline, William and Sam, for joining us here today and giving your heartfelt thoughts and love towards country and to place as well. Thank you to all of those visitors who have virtually joined us. We can't see your faces, but there's so many questions and I'd love to get through some more. So hopefully we can have those shared and maybe we can have a go at answering that in some way. Keep exploring Sydney Open. It's on for the rest of the month of November, and you can look at the Sydney Living Museum's website. I think it's slm.is/open. Did I say that right? Awesome. You'll find podcasts, virtual and audio tours, and more panels like this one. In fact, I'll be on one later on today again. So if you want to hear more from me, come back at 3 p.m. Where I'll be being asked the questions rather than the asker of questions. And that's the Connecting with Country panel, and that's at 3 o'clock, and it'll be all First Nations speakers there. Thanks so much. Didgeridoo.